The sound of bone meeting stone is different from what people imagine. It is not dramatic. It does not echo the way it does in films. It is small and dense and final, like a door closing somewhere very far away. Ren did not make a sound when he hit the ground. He had learned, over 4 years of service to the Vale Pack, that sound invited more. That stillness was the closest thing to safety a Packless Omega could manufacture, in a world that had decided he was worth less than the shoes of the men standing over him. So he was still. And he did not know, could not have known, that 40 yards away in the dark tree line surrounding the Vale compound, 50 pairs of gold eyes had just opened and were watching every single thing that happened next. Stay with me, because what comes next is going to change everything. 4 years earlier, Ren had arrived at the Vale Pack compound with nothing but a transit pack clearance document and a reference letter from a healer 3 territories over who had employed him for 2 years and described him in writing as the most quietly capable person I have ever worked with. He was 20 years old, packless since 16, when the pack he was born into dissolved after its alpha died without an heir, and the territory was absorbed by 3 neighboring packs, none of whom wanted the Omegas that came with it. He had been surviving on contract work since then, healer's assistant, archive keeper, kitchen staff, whatever was needed, wherever it was needed, for however long they needed it before the contract ended and he moved on. The Vale Pack needed a records manager. Ren needed a place to sleep that was not a transit shelter. The arrangement was supposed to be temporary, 6 months, maybe a year. 4 years later he was still there, which told you something about how quietly useful a person can make themselves when their survival depended on it. He managed the pack's administrative records. He handled correspondence with neighboring territories. He organized the medical files, the land documentation, the council meeting, minutes going back 30 years. He knew the Vale Pack's institutional history better than most of the wolves who had been born into it. What the Vale Pack knew about Ren was considerably less. They knew he was an Omega. They knew he was packless. They knew he kept to himself and did his work and did not complain and did not cause problems. What they did not know was that he noticed everything. Every political shift in the pack's power structure, every decision made in closed council sessions that contradicted the official record, every discrepancy between what was documented and what actually happened. He noticed. He said nothing. He filed things where they belonged and cataloged things the way they were supposed to be cataloged and kept his observations in a part of his mind that he did not open in front of anyone. He had survived 4 years in the Vale Pack by being useful and invisible simultaneously. He had almost made it to the end of year 4. Almost. The night it ended began the way most catastrophic nights begin, not with obvious warning signs, with something small that was slightly wrong. Ren had been in the Eastern Records room until past midnight, finishing a cross-referencing project that the pack administrator needed by morning. He had let himself out through the side entrance, the one that opened onto the path between the main compound and the staff quarters, the one he had walked 400 times without incident. He heard them before he saw them, 3 of them. Beta Cores and 2 of his unit wolves, Davin and Theus. They were coming from the direction of the pack hall, and they had been drinking, and they were in the specific mood that Ren had learned over 4 years to recognize and avoid. He stepped to the side of the path to let them pass. Cores stopped. "What are you doing out here?" he said. It was not a question. "Working late," Ren said. "Records project for Administrator Holt." He kept his voice flat and his eyes down. Flat and down was usually enough. A flat and down communicated nothing worth engaging with, usually. Cores had been in a bad temper for 3 weeks, ever since the council had passed over him for a senior enforcement position. Ren knew this because he had filed the council minutes from that meeting. He also knew that Cores had submitted a formal objection that had been logged and then quietly removed from the visible record, which meant someone with council access had edited the official documentation. He had noted this. He had said nothing. He had filed the unedited version in the secondary stacks where nobody looked. He wished now that he had done something more with that information than file it. Records project, Cores repeated. He said it the way people say things when they are looking for a reason, and the thing you have said will do as well as anything else. He stepped closer. At midnight, for Holt. Yes, Ren said. "You know what I think," Cores said. "I think a packless Omega creeping around the compound after midnight is a security concern." He looked at Davin and Thace. "Don't you think that's a security concern?" They agreed the way wolves agree with their betas when they have been drinking. Easily and without thought, Ren said, "I have a late work authorization on file with the administrator. You can check it in the morning." He should not have said it, not because it was wrong. He did have the authorization. It was filed correctly and Holt would confirm it without hesitation. But because Kors was not actually interested in the authorization. Kors was interested in the fact that Ren was a packless Omega, alone on a dark path at midnight, and the only thing standing between that fact and its consequences was a piece of paper that was not here. The first hit came from Davin, not Kors. Kors was too strategic for that, even drunk. He let his wolves do the first part. It caught Ren across the back of the shoulder and sent him into the stone wall bordering the path. He caught himself, turned, and Kors was already there, close enough that Ren could smell the alcohol and the particular sour edge of 3 weeks of accumulated resentment. "You have no pack," Kors said quietly. "You have no alpha. You have no one in this compound whose wolf is going to care what happens to you out here." Ren looked at him. He thought about 4 years of saying nothing, of filing things correctly and keeping his head down and making himself useful and invisible, and telling himself that this was enough, that survival counted as success, that he was fine. He was tired of fine. So he said, "You edited the council minutes from the senior enforcement meeting. The original version is in the secondary stacks, section 14, filed under administrative discrepancies. Anyone who looks will find it." The silence that followed lasted approximately 2 seconds. Then Kors hit him, not the way Davin had hit him, with intent, with the weight of an alpha-trained beta who had spent years learning exactly how much force was required to make a point. Ren went down. He did not make a sound. He lay on the stone path with his cheek against the cold ground and listened to Kors's breathing above him and thought very clearly and specifically about the secondary stacks and whether anyone would look in the next 24 hours, which was about how long he estimated he had before whatever was happening here progressed to something he could not catalog his way out of. "You should not have said that," Kors said from above him, his voice very calm now. The drinking did not make him louder. It made him quieter. Ren had noticed this 4 years ago and had considered it the most dangerous thing about him. "I know," Ren said into the stone. Kors gestured to Davin and Theus. What happened next lasted approximately 8 minutes. Ren catalogued it the way he catalogued everything. With the careful, precise attention of a person who has learned that paying attention is the only control available to him in a situation where he has no other kind. He counted the impacts. He noted which ones produced sounds he recognized as structural damage versus soft tissue. He monitored his own breathing and was satisfied that it remained consistent. He did not make a sound, and he did not see, could not see from his position on the ground, the tree line 40 yards away, where something had been watching since before this began. "Are you still with me? Because what comes next is the part I have been waiting to tell you. Leave a comment right now telling me you are here. I am reading every single one." Kors stopped, not because he was finished, because from the tree line came a sound. It was not a growl exactly, as it was something underneath a growl, something that did not need volume because it did not work through the ears. It worked through the part of the brain that predates language, the part that exists in every living thing and exists for one purpose only, which is to recognize the presence of something categorically more dangerous than itself and respond accordingly. Davin took a step back. Theus made a sound that was not words. Kors went very still. From the tree line, stepping onto the path with the unhurried certainty of something that has never needed to rush, came a man. He was not exceptionally tall. He was not visibly armed. He wore dark clothes and moved with a quality of stillness that should not have been possible in motion. The kind of stillness that meant every step was deliberate and nothing about him was accidental. His eyes in the low light of the compound were gold, not yellow, not amber, the specific gold of something very old and very certain of itself. Behind him, stepping out of the tree line in a line that stretched further than should have been possible, came wolves. They did not rush. They did not snarl. They simply appeared, one after another, from the dark between the trees, until the path and the ground on either side of it were lined with them. Massive, black-furred, their presence alone doing what weapons do in lesser animals. Kors counted. He stopped at 30 and the line was still coming. The man walked past Davin and Theus as if they were furniture. He walked past Kors in the same way. He went directly to where Ren was lying on the ground and crouched down. Ren, through the specific careful focus he had been maintaining, was aware of him, of the crouching, of the quality of attention being directed at him, which was different from the attention of the past 8 minutes in every possible way. He opened his eyes. The face above him was angular and calm, and the gold eyes were looking at him with an expression that Ren did not have a category for. He had categories for most expressions. He had been reading rooms and people for 4 years because his survival had depended on reading them correctly. This one was new. Who did this? The man said. His voice was quiet. That was the first thing Ren noticed about it. Not loud, not performing anything, just asking. Ren looked at him. Then he looked past him at Kors, who had not moved, and at the wolves lined along the path, who also had not moved. All of them, Ren said. His voice came out steady, which surprised him. Kors gave the order. The other two executed it. The man looked at Ren for another moment. Then he stood. He turned to Kors. Kors was a beta of the Vale pack. He had been in enforcement for 6 years. He had training and rank and the backing of a pack structure. And in every situation Ren had observed him navigate, over 4 years he had been the most dangerous thing in the room. He was not the most dangerous thing in this path. He understood this in the way that every animal understands hierarchy when it encounters something far enough above it in the order, not through reasoning, through something older. Your name, the man said. Kors said nothing. Your name, the man said again, still quiet, still not performing. Kors, the beta said, his voice coming out smaller than he intended. Kors, the man said it the way you confirm a notation. And he looked at the wolves along the path, then at Davin and Thais, who had taken several more steps backward and were now pressed against the compound wall. Then he crouched back down next to Ren. Can you move? He said. Some things, Ren said, taking inventory. He pushed himself to sitting. His ribs protested in a way that suggested structural damage. His left eye was swelling. His hands were steady. The man looked at his hands. Then he did something Ren did not expect. He took off his jacket and held it out. Ren looked at the jacket, then at the man. The gold eyes were waiting without impatience. He took the jacket. My name is Caius, the man said. Can you stand if I help you? Probably, Ren said. Caius put a hand under his arm and helped him stand. And he did it with the careful precision of someone who knew exactly how to move a person who was injured without creating additional damage. Ren stood. He was approximately 5 inches shorter than Caius and considerably lighter, and he was standing in a borrowed jacket in the middle of a path next to 50 wolves and a man with gold eyes who had appeared from a tree line and asked his name before he asked anything else. What is happening? Ren said. Caius looked at him. That expression again, the one without a category. I will explain, he said, but first, he turned to Kors, and the temperature on the path dropped. Leave a comment right now if you need a moment, because I needed a moment when I wrote this part. Take it, then keep reading. Kors had been in enforcement for 6 years. He had faced down rogue wolves in territorial disputes and 2 formal alpha challenges in his career. He had a record of successful confrontations that the Pack Council had cited when they bypassed him for the senior position, which was one of the details Ren had noted when he filed the original unedited minutes. The Council's stated reason for the bypass was insufficient control in high-pressure situations. Kors was, at this moment, demonstrating that the Council had been correct. He could not speak, not because Caius had commanded him to be silent in any formal sense, because Caius was looking at him with the gold eyes and the specific quality of attention that Kors's wolf recognized and was responding to by going completely still in the way that smaller predators go still when a larger one is deciding what to do. My name, Caius said. Is Caius Varn. The sound Kors made was involuntary. The Varn pack occupied the Northern Territory, 400 kilometers from Vale lands. They were not a rumor. They were not a ghost story. They were simply a name that appeared in the historical records in the context of territorial conflicts that the involved parties had invariably lost, spoken of with the particular careful neutrality that people use when describing something they find it wiser not to provoke. Ren had filed 17 documents referencing them in 4 years. He had never seen one of them. Why? Ren said. He said it quietly, to Caius specifically. Why are you here? Caius looked at him. How long have you worked in the records room? He said. 4 years, Ren said. Caius nodded. His eyes moved to the compound building, and to the lit windows of the upper floor where the pack administrator's office was, then back to Kors. 4 years ago, he said, the Vale pack entered into a territorial agreement with the Varn pack. Part of that agreement included the right of Varn oversight to the Vale administrative records. He paused. A provision that the Vale Council acknowledged, and then buried in a subsection of the secondary documentation where they hoped nobody would find it. Ren thought about the secondary documentation, about the subsections, about 4 years of cross-referencing and filing and cataloging, about a provision he had found 8 months ago and flagged in his private notes because it was unusual, and he had not yet understood why. You found the provision, Ren said. You found it first, Caius said, 8 months ago. You flagged it in your working notes, and then you did not report it to the Vale Council. Ren looked at him. I did not know who to report it to. Ren said, and something about it felt like it was not mine to decide. Caius held his gaze. We have been watching this compound for 8 months, he said, waiting to understand the situation before we made contact. He paused. I did not expect the situation to accelerate tonight. The provision? Ren said slowly. What does it give you? Oversight of the administrative records, Caius said, which means legal standing to request access to any documentation the Velpak has produced in the last decade, including council minutes, including enforcement records, including any evidence of conduct that violates the terms of the territorial agreement. Evidence, Ren said. He thought about 4 years of filing things where they belonged, about the secondary stacks, about the unedited council minutes in Section 14, about 17 documents he had flagged and cataloged because they were unusual, and because he had learned that the only thing you could do with the truth when you could not speak it was put it somewhere. Someone else could find it. I have it, he said. Caius looked at him. I know, he said. Ren processed this. You have been watching for 8 months, he said. Yes. You watched him file things. Yes. You watched what he noticed. Yes. He looked at the gold eyes, at the expression he still did not have a category for. You could have come directly to the records room, Ren said. I would have given you access. The provision gives you the right. Yes, Caius said. We could have, but you waited. Caius was quiet for a moment. I wanted to understand who you were first, he said, before I walked into your space and turned your situation upside down. Ren looked at him. He thought about 4 years of being useful and invisible and telling himself that this was enough, about lying on a stone path and counting impacts and monitoring his breathing because it was the only kind of control available to him, about a jacket that smelled like pine and winter air that someone had taken off and held out without explanation. You were protecting me, Ren said. I was trying to, Caius said. He glanced at Ren's eye, at the way he was holding his ribs. I was too far back in the tree line. I moved when I should have moved sooner. It was not your responsibility, Ren said. I disagree, Caius said simply. The path was quiet. The wolves were quiet. As somewhere in the compound a light went on in an upper floor window, then off again. Cores had not moved. Caius turned to him now with the full weight of his attention. You are going to take me to the Veil Alpha, Caius said. Tonight, we are going to present the oversight provision, and we are going to begin a formal review of the PAC's administrative record going back 10 years. He paused. You will not speak about what happened on this path tonight except in the context of the formal review, where it will be documented along with everything else. If you choose not to cooperate, the 50 wolves behind me will accompany me to the Alpha's residence directly. In that case, the conversation will be less formal. He looked at Davin and Thace. The 3 of you will walk ahead of us. You will not run. You will not make contact with anyone in the compound before we reach the Alpha's residence. Do you understand? They understood. Caius turned back to Ren. There is a medical team at the edge of the territory, he said. My doctor. I would like her to look at your ribs. Ren considered. After, he said. I want to be there for the conversation with the Veil Alpha. Caius looked at him. You do not have to be, he said. You have already done enough. I know I do not have to be, Ren said. I want to be. 4 years is long enough to wait to say something. Caius held his gaze for a moment. Then he smiled. It was not a large smile. It was the kind of smile that happens when someone says something that aligns with what you had hoped they would say but did not want to assume. Then let's go, Caius said. He fell into step beside Ren. Not in front, beside. The 50 wolves moved with them, and Cores walked ahead of them into the compound, with the specific posture of a man who has spent 6 years being the most dangerous thing in the room, and is reckoning very thoroughly with what it means not to be. Do you need a moment? Take it, and drop a comment below, telling me what you are feeling right now, because I need to know I am not alone in this. The Veil Alpha's name was Marin. He was 53 years old and had held the Alpha seat for 22 years, and had in that time built a pack that functioned smoothly and looked well managed from the outside, and had, in its administrative records, 17 irregularities that had been quietly accumulating for a decade under the assumption that nobody with the standing to act on them would ever look. He was awake when Tho arrived. Either he had been informed, or he had heard the quality of silence that descends on a compound when 50 wolves materialize from a tree line. Either way, he was sitting in the formal receiving room in his Alpha's chair with 3 senior wolves behind him when Caius walked in. He looked at Caius, at the wolves visible through the window, at Cores and Davin and Thace, who had the posture of men who have done something they will be accounting for a long time. Then he looked at Ren. He had looked past Ren for 4 years. Every time Ren had delivered records or presented documentation or attended administrative meetings, Marin had processed him as furniture, as a function, as a packless omega whose continued presence in the compound was contingent on his usefulness and who was therefore worth exactly as much as what he could do. Sahid looked at Ren now and saw something different, and Ren watched him understand, in real time, what that meant. Caius placed a document on the table between them. Territorial Agreement, Subsection 7, Provision C, he said. Oversight rights to Vale administrative records, acknowledged by the Vale Council and witnessed by 2 senior wolves whose signatures are on page 4. I would like to begin the review immediately. Tonight, Marin looked at the document. His senior wolves looked at each other. In the morning, Marin said carefully. It is past midnight. Ren spoke. He had not planned to. He had been planning to observe, to let Caius handle the formal part, because the formal part was Caius's standing to handle. But 4 years of saying nothing ended somewhere on a stone path and had not started again. In the morning, Ren said, "But the secondary stacks in Section 14 will have been accessed and altered." He looked at Marin. The same way the council minutes from the senior enforcement meeting were altered 3 months ago. He looked at Kors. The same way the land transfer documentation from the northern boundary dispute was altered 2 years ago. He paused. I have the originals. All of them. I've been filing the unedited versions in a location that is not on the primary access list and that no one has looked at in 4 years because everyone with the authority to look has been too comfortable with the edited versions to go looking for what they replaced. The room was very quiet. Marin looked at Ren for a long time. You are a records clerk, he said finally. Yes, Ren said. A very thorough one. Caius was looking at him. Ren did not look back. He kept his eyes on Marin with the steady attention of someone who has been paying attention for 4 years and has nothing left to lose by letting it show. The review begins tonight, Caius said, his voice carrying the quality it had carried on the path. Not loud, not performing. Certain. You will make your senior administrative staff available. You will provide unrestricted access to all record systems, primary and secondary. And you will suspend Kors in his unit pending the outcome of the review. Marin looked at the document again. At his senior wolves, at the window where the wolves were still visible in the dark outside, at Ren. Then he said, Very well. The review took 11 days. Ren worked alongside Caius's administrative team for all 11 of them, pulling records and cross-referencing documentation and explaining the filing system he had built over 4 years to people who kept looking at him with an expression he was still developing the category for. On day 3, Caius's doctor cleared his ribs as bruised but not broken, which he considered a favorable result given the circumstances. On day 5, Kors was formally suspended pending council review. Davin and Theus were suspended the same day. On day 7, the Vale Council convened an emergency session that Ren attended and documented in full because he was the only person in the compound who reliably produced accurate minutes, and at this point everyone knew it. On day 9, Marin submitted a formal acknowledgement of the provision's validity and signed the oversight agreement that expanded Varn authority to include a permanent administrative liaison position within the Vale compound. On day 11, Caius asked Ren if he would take the position. They were in the records room, late, the same hour Ren was usually there, because the work had not stopped for the review and would not stop after it. He was cross-referencing the newly corrected council minutes with the original documents from the secondary stacks, producing a clean and complete version of the record for the first time in a decade. Caius had been there for the last 2 hours, not working, just there, in the way he had been in the records room on and off for 11 days, present without demanding anything from the presence. Ren had stopped finding it strange on day 4. The liaison position, Caius said, it would formalize what you have been doing informally for 4 years. You would have standing, pack affiliation, the authority to act on what you notice rather than just filing it and waiting. Ren looked at the document in front of him. I have been packless since I was 16, he said. I know, Caius said. A liaison position is not a pack affiliation, Ren said. No, Caius said. He was quiet for a moment. The position is attached to the Varn Pack's oversight authority, which means it carries Varn administrative affiliation, which is different from a liaison position. Ren looked up. Caius was looking at him with the gold eyes and the expression that Ren had been developing the category for over 11 days, and had, somewhere around day 7, arrived at a tentative classification for. It was the expression of a person who has been watching through a tree line for 8 months and has finally walked out of it. You are offering me something else, Ren said. I am offering you the choice, Caius said. The liaison position exists, and it is real, and I would want you in it regardless of anything else. But I'm also telling you that for 8 months I watched you work in this room, and I learned how you think, and how you notice things, and how you make decisions about what to do with what you know. And I would like to keep doing that, not through a tree line. He paused. If you are willing. Ren held his gaze. He thought about 4 years, about useful and invisible, about counting impacts on a stone path and monitoring his breathing, because it was the only control available, about a jacket in the dark, and a man who crouched down and asked his name before he asked anything else, about 50 wolves stepping out of a tree line because someone had been watching and had decided that what they saw mattered. You waited 8 months, Ren said. Yes. Before that you were tracking the oversight provision. Yes. How long did that take? Caius was quiet for a moment. 14 months, he said. From the time I first identified the provision to the time I located the records room. So you spent 14 months finding me, Ren said slowly. And then 8 months watching me. And then you came out of a tree line on a Tuesday night. Caius looked at him. I should have come out sooner, he said. I know that. I was not sure you would want the disruption. You thought I was comfortable, Ren said. I thought you had built something you might not want changed. Ren looked at the records room. At the shelves, he knew the way. Some people know the layout of their own home. At 4 years of careful work in a place that had never been his. It was not comfortable, he said. It was survivable. Those are different things. Caius was quiet. I know, he said. I am sorry it took me so long to come out of the tree line. Ren looked at him for a long moment. The gold eyes were waiting, not with impatience, just waiting, the way they had waited on a stone path while Ren decided whether to take a jacket from a stranger. He had taken the jacket. He looked at Caius. Tell me about the Varn pack, he said, and Caius told him. He talked for 2 hours about the Northern Territory and how it was structured and what the pack valued and how decisions were made and what it meant to belong to something that had decided it was accountable for the things that happened inside it. Ren listened the way he listened to everything, completely, with the specific quality of attention that meant he would remember every word. At the end, Caius said, I have talked for 2 hours. You have, Ren said. Most people fall asleep. Ren looked at him. You are not most people. Caius held his gaze. Neither are you, he said. The records room was quiet. The compound outside was settling into its late-night rhythms. Somewhere in the building someone was making coffee. Ren could smell it through the door. He thought about the liaison position, about pack affiliation, about a man who had spent 22 months finding him and had come out of a tree line on a Tuesday and crouched down in the dark and asked his name. Yes, Ren said. Caius looked at him. To which part? Ren looked back. Both, he said. The expression on Caius's face completed itself. Ren filed it in the category he had been building for 11 days. It looked like relief, the specific relief of a person who has been waiting for something for a long time and had not let themselves assume it would happen. The formal proceedings concluded the following week. Kors and his unit were brought before the Joint Council, Vael and Varn both present, and the complete record was presented. All of it, the edited minutes and the originals side by side, the land transfer documentation, the enforcement records, 11 days of cross-referencing laid out in precise chronological order by the person who had been filing both versions for 4 years. Ren presented it himself. He stood at the front of the council chamber and walked through the documentation with the calm, steady voice he used in the records room, the voice of someone who knows exactly where everything is and has known for a long time. Kors sat across the table and said nothing. There was nothing to say. The record was complete and accurate, and Ren had made it so. When Ren finished, there was silence. Then Caius, sitting at the council table as the Varn Alpha, said, The Varn Pack formally requests that the council consider the full record in its ruling, including the circumstances that made this documentation possible. He looked at Ren. Specifically, he said, the 4 years of careful work done by an individual who had no formal standing to act on what he knew and chose to preserve it anyway in the hope that someone with that standing would eventually look. The council looked at Ren. Ren looked at the council. He had spent 4 years being looked past. The adjustment took a moment. Then he stood straight in his borrowed Varn affiliation badge and said, I just filed things where they belonged. I always believed someone would eventually look. The ruling came 3 days later. Kors and his unit were removed from enforcement. The edited records were formally corrected. The Vael Council was restructured under joint oversight, and the secondary stacks in Section 14 were formally designated as a protected record under the territorial agreement. A Ren transferred to the Varn territory at the end of the month. He did not bring much. He had not accumulated much in 4 years of surviving. What he brought was a transit pack and 22 months of cross-reference documentation that Caius's administrative team had been asking for, and a worn-out habit of making himself small that he was working on unlearning. The Varn Pack records room was larger than the one at Vale. It was also considerably more disorganized. Ren stood in the middle of it on his first day and looked at the shelves and felt something that took him a moment to identify. It was the feeling of a problem he knew how to solve. He started on the left. Caius found him there 4 hours later. She cross-legged on the floor with 3 years of misfiled territorial documentation sorted into piles around him, and an expression of focused concentration that Caius had watched from a tree line for 8 months and had not gotten tired of watching. "You were supposed to take the day to settle in," Caius said from the doorway. "I am settling in," Ren said without looking up. "On the floor. The floor is where the misfiled documents are." Caius leaned against the doorframe. Ren looked up at him, at the gold eyes, at the expression. He had the full category for it now. There were many things in it: recognition, patience, relief, the specific quality of attention that someone gives to something they are grateful exists. He had been working on believing he deserved it. He was getting better at it. "How long until you have it organized?" Caius asked. Ren looked around the room. 3 weeks, he said. "Maybe 2 if you stop talking to me." Caius smiled. "The small, real one from the records room at Vael. Then I will stop talking," he said. He sat down on the floor beside Ren. He picked up a document. He handed it to Ren. And in the Varn Pack records room, in the late afternoon light, 2 people who had found each other through the specific improbable mechanism of territorial provisions in secondary stacks and 50 wolves in a tree line sat on the floor and worked. No performance, no pretense, just the work in the comfortable silence of 2 people who had found the right language for each other. And somewhere in the Vale compound, in section 14 of the secondary stacks, the original unedited record sat on its shelf exactly where it had always been, waiting. The way the truth always waits, for someone patient enough to find it. That is the story of Ren, the Omega who spent 4 years filing the truth in places nobody looked, waiting for someone with the standing to use it, and the Alpha who spent 22 months finding him and 8 months watching him, and finally walked out of a tree line on a Tuesday night because waiting any longer was not an option. This story is not about power. It is about patience. It is about what happens when someone who has been surviving finally encounters someone who has been looking. It is about the fact that the truth, carefully preserved, is the most powerful thing in any room, and the person who keeps it, quietly and without recognition, for 4 years in the hope that someone will eventually look, deserves to be found. If this story stayed with you, leave me a comment below. Tell me what moment got you. The tree line, the jacket, the records room, the floor. I am reading every single one, and I will be here. Hit that like button if you felt this one in your chest. Subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss another story from this pack. And share it with someone who has spent too long being useful and invisible and needs to hear that someone is looking. They are always looking.